Tansei adoya nitotem, Pawâcikêwikamik nisihigasan. Hey everyone, it's your friend Brianna Couture. I am here to provide you with another wonderful Cricut tutorial, and today we are actually going to be making a t-shirt using HTV or heat transfer vinyl. Now I've brought a few different types of heat transfer vinyl just to kind of show off. They come rolled like this. This is how you would purchase a package at Michael's, or there's a few other places around Saskatoon here where you could purchase vinyl. And so usually they come, you know, with a label and all wrapped around this wonderful roll here. So what I do when I get my heat transfer vinyl at home is I take the cardboard tube and I write on it whatever the vinyl is, and I'll mention if it's like heat transfer or permanent or temporary, and usually a little bit of a description of what it is. So I have a few different rolls of vinyl here I wanted to show off because there's so many different options in terms of the vinyl that you can purchase and use in these creations. So this one is a holographic vinyl, and it's like a rainbow pearl. So I'm not sure if the camera's picking this all up very well, but I keep scraps every time I do different projects. And I just love the way that you can reuse pieces and making materials stretch as far as possible. I like to be frugal in that sense. Another type of vinyl here, this is the Caesar Metal HTV, and so I have this in a gold color. And again, this one is like super shiny and really looks striking, like maybe on a black t-shirt. When you're designing, it's really important to imagine colors. I can't tell you how many times I've designed something in Design Space, and then when I come to actually cut it and print it and put it on the shirt, it looks not as great as it did digitally. So there's a bit of a learning curve there in terms of how to get your materials to work for you. Again, I have another rainbow. This is a Caesar holographic HTV, and it's a rainbow color. So this one actually has like a variation, and I love like the sparkles that you can get with that. And I have a child who's LGBTQ, they're transgendered, so I love using rainbow kind of stuff for things with them. This here is an example of, this one here, sorry. This is the glitter HTV, and you can tell by some of the products I brought here that I'm pretty bold. I love very shiny, glittery, fancy things. So this is the gold one. There's also silver and rose gold and like a multicolored one in this roll here that I purchased. So lots of really great options. And you can tell my favorite brand is this Caesar brand. S-I-S-E-R is how it's spelled. And that brand, I find you get the best wear out of it. So when you're washing your project over and over and you get to wear it again and again, I just think it's better than maybe the Cricut brand or some of the other, even like online and Amazon, you can find some kind of knockoff brands of vinyl. So I'd caution you about some of those. But some people get lucky and some people have great success with them. I haven't, but each to their own, you know, as you get digging a little bit further into some of these great materials, then that's just kind of some exploration that people get to do. So the HTVs that I've shown you so far, these would all be cut mirrored in the mat here. But this one here is, I wanted to bring this one as an example of one that you wouldn't mirror. So you can see it has a pattern on it, and so you would actually cut this right side up. And then within the roll here, it also comes with transfer tape or a carrier sheet, this can be known as. And so you would cut it side up here, and then you would use this sheet to lift the project and then iron it onto your shirt with that. So just be aware when you're purchasing your vinyls or thinking about which vinyl to use for which project, the way that you would actually need to cut it and prepare it. So those are some types of HTV that I wanted to show you, but today we're going to just be using the Caesar HTV. This is their Easy Weed HTV, and weeding is the process of removing the negative pieces of the image from the vinyl. So if it's an easy weed, that can tell you that it's going to be easier for you to get rid of those negative pieces. It's not going to be so finicky. So some of the materials that we'll be using today to create a t-shirt, of course, we have our laptop with design space. We have our Cricut Maker 3 with the fine point premium blade. We've got our HTV vinyl. We have parchment paper. And so this is like a baking paper that you can get just at Dollarama or anywhere. This one is from Dollarama, actually. You can see our $2 sticker here. You could also get this like Walmart, Superstore, basically anywhere you would purchase any of your baking supplies. We have a t-shirt blank here that we're going to be using. And this one is an orange t-shirt, so I was feeling inspired. I think we're going to create something, kind of like Every Child Matters kind of thing, for Orange T-shirt Day. So that's kind of the vision that I have for what we can create this afternoon. I also have weeding tools here. So these are the tools that we will use to pick that negative vinyl off of our design. Scissors, and also our Cricut slicer. So that's a handy tool for us to have for when we want to size off the roll here. The other pieces we have would be our Cricut cutting mat. I just have a 30 centimeter by 30 centimeter mat here. This is the green, so the standard grip mat. And I have a lint roller, and so we'll actually be using this to pick off any lint and make sure that our surface on the t-shirt is good to go for pressing. Speaking of pressing, we'll also be using the Cricut Easy Press. I have a bigger press today. It's like a 12 by 9, I believe it is, 12 inches by 9 inches. So we'll be able to see that in action in a minute here. And our final material would be masking tape, because we'll need to probably tape the vinyl to the mat here. So those are all of our materials that we're going to need to be able to create this wonderful t-shirt. Let's get into Design Space and come up with our design for what the t-shirt's going to look like. So I'm logged in here on Cricut Design Space. I'm going to click in the top right corner, New Project, and that'll create a blank canvas for me to be able to work on here. Seeing as how I am going to do an Every Child Matters t-shirt, I'm just going to use some of the images and text right within Design Space here to design. So I'll click on images, and I think for the vision that I have in mind, I want kind of a silhouette and maybe some feathers, and then I'll write some words, and so have Every Child Matters as the words here. So let me just look up, the word I'm going to look up here is braid. And you can see tons of results available here. The filters on the left side here allow you to search for free images. You can look at project types, materials, language, ownerships. What I'm going to filter by here is the operation type, and I want a cut-only image. So it won't be needing a pen or anything to draw that image out. Oh, and I love this braid image right here. It's got some little bangs and two little braids down the side, but a blank face. So I'm going to add that to my canvas. Now, when you're thinking about designing, it's really important to plan the size of your project, because that will determine how much detail the images and words that you select can have. If a project is too detailed and very small, you're going to have a lot of trouble with your cut, and you're not going to be able to have a successful cut or weeding from that. So I like this image because it's quite blocky. It's not too fine or detailed. I'm going to go into the images again here, and let's find a feather this time. I'd like to add a feather. And you can see there's all kinds of options. Now, I'm really lucky that I am able to subscribe to Cricut's subscription, and so they have a monthly subscription that you could pay for. It's called Access. And Access allows you to have a lot more projects, a lot more images, a lot more fonts available for you in Design Space. But they do have a lot of great basic fonts and images for users to be able to create some wonderful things. Oh, and I love this feather here. This one, again, is kind of chunky, doesn't have too fine of some detail, and kind of, I feel like it kind of goes with the braid image that we have here. So what I want to do is I'm going to actually rotate my feathers so it's just a little bit more vertical here, and I'm going to align it next to my child. I'm going to duplicate this, so you could actually use the layers panel on the right-hand side here and click duplicate. Or if you're like me and you're really used to using keyboard shortcuts, you can just Control-C, Control-V, and that's a copy and a paste. And so we see the new feather has appeared here up in the corner. I'm going to flip this feather horizontally. And so now you can see that they've both kind of come around the child's face here. I'm going to select all three of these images, and I am going to align them. Is it center horizontally? Sometimes I don't remember what I'm trying to do here. Oh, and see, so it collapsed them all into that horizontal center. I'm going to click undo and select all three again, and I'm going to center them vertically. There we go. And so now they're nice and aligned here. The grid can also help you with your alignment, so you're able to kind of see where, using those squares, just kind of matching things up and getting them set up the appropriate way here. So I'm just trying to determine if I feel like this one feather is just a little bit out. I'm going to use my arrow key here to just kind of bump it in just a bit so it kind of matches the other side. I'm eyeballing it here. That's the fun thing about design, is you get to kind of be flexible and have a good time. So I'm going to take these three pieces now, and I'm going to group them together. So now the feathers and the headpiece are locked together. I can move them all at once. Now that I have kind of the imagery together, I want to focus on the text that we'll be using. So I'll click text. And here I'm going to write, "Every child matters." And so the text has come up on the canvas. I'm not super excited about this font. I don't feel like it goes with the image that we're trying to create. So what I'm going to do is I am going to use the fonts here, and I'll just kind of scroll until something catches my eye here. Again, I'm looking for something that's not too fine or detailed, because as this is cut, I want to make sure that it's not going to be too small, and I won't be able to weed it. Oh, I kind of like that. The font I've found here is BFC Christmas Cards. This is one of the things I find trickiest about designing is I feel like I could search for fonts for hours. So I think I just need to stick with the first one here that I feel good about. Now that I have my grouped images and my text here, I'm going to select all of them at the same time. And I'm going to use my align. So because the feathers and the silhouette are already grouped, I'm just aligning the text to the feathers and the silhouette. So I think, is it horizontally now? Yeah, center horizontally. There we go. So now the text and then the images are centered perfectly with the text there. I think I'm going to bump the text up a bit. It's still separate from the image, so I'm using just my up arrow key and just clicking a few times, and you'll see it just very minutely is raising towards the images here. All right. I'm going to select everything here. Now, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to weld everything together, but let me show you what happens if I just group. So I've grouped the feathers and the silhouette with all the text. It's all one piece here on the canvas. I can move it all as one. I can deselect it, and if I select it again, it's all one again here. But when I click Make It, and it's just sorting projects by mat here, you'll see it's not keeping the dimensions and keeping the shape that I had designed in Design Space. So the silhouette's here, the feathers are over here. What we're going to want to do is we're actually going to want to weld these together. So I'll hit cancel out of that Make It. I'm grabbing our whole group here again. Actually, I'll show you what happens if we attach it as well, because attaching is kind of another way of grouping things. So I'm attaching them all together. I click Make It. Oh, and this one actually, so I can attach or I can weld. Because I'm only using one color here. So if I had multiple colors that I was using in this project, it could cause a little bit of a mix-up with the attach feature, as they won't be kept in the same dimensions that you have designed them in. So see, I'm learning every day still. I'm still getting new lessons as I go through this. So we're ready to cut here just from that attach feature on the panel there, the layers panel. So when I look at the mat here, this is how we prepare the mat. I can see the mat's already selected at 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters, so matching the green standard grip that I have here. We're going to want to remember to mirror this cut, and so you can see the wording is all flipped backwards now, and that's because we're cutting from the back side of the vinyl, and then when we press it and peel away the carrier, it'll be front side facing forward. I guess the next part of what I usually do is I am going to measure out how much vinyl I'm going to need. So looking at the screen here, I can see it's coming around 20 centimeters. So I'm going to use my slicer, and I'm going to slice off about 19.5 centimeters, and that should give us lots of space to be able to cut our design here. Make a little room on the table to get things kind of spaced out here. So I'm opening up the arm on the slicer, and I'll be looking here at the measurement for about 19.5 to 20 centimeters. So with the Caesar Easy Weed, the instruction roll comes out. If you don't know what you're doing, you'll be able to look here. It has instructions available right in the label. with the Caesar Easy Weed, or any of the Caesar products actually, any of the Caesar HTVs, whether it's like glitter, holographic, patterned, I would recommend visiting the Caesar website. You can find their heat guide there, and that will tell you based on your material. So for example, the shirt here that we're using, this one is 50% cotton, 50% polyester. So based on the material of your shirt and which type of HTV you're using, it'll tell you what temperature to set your easy press on and for how long you're going to press your shirt. So the Caesar heat guide available on their website is essential when it comes to creating these wonderful HTV creations. So here I've got the roll, there's the cardboard tube inside. I'm just gonna feed this under my slicer to be able to give myself that 19.5 piece of material. And then that way, if I already separate it from the main roll, it's not going to waste so much material. You're able to save a lot more material that way. Whereas if I just cut it 30 to 30, you might be left with a weird chunk that's not going to fit for anything. So I'm slicing off just basically what I need for this project. Okay, so we'll put the slicer away. And this is our piece that we'll be working with. Now, when you look at this piece of HTV, one side is very shiny and the other side is a little bit like matte or dull. And so when we affix the HTV to our Cricut mat, we want to make sure we're setting this shiny side down. And so that means the blade is going to be cutting on the matte side of HTV. And of course, this depends on which material you're using. So with the HTV, we're mirroring it and we're setting it shiny side down because this shiny side is the protector for when we go to iron it on the shirt. So I would caution people also how much that you just avoid trying to touch the matte side too much. The oils from your fingers can actually affect the glue that's in this matte side and can cause it to lift from the shirt or not adhere all the way. So when I actually am handling it, I'm kind of doing it like a photograph, like I'm just kind of barely holding kind of the sides of it. When I go to weed, I actually have a wonderful little scrap piece of parchment paper that I kind of use to kind of lay my hands down or to hold on to it so I'm not like fingerprinting it all up. So these are just tricks that I've learned along the way and kind of best practices for us to be able to figure it out here. So I'm going to take my protective sheet off of my mat and we'll align the vinyl. We're kind of lining it up to this top left corner of the mat here. So let's stick it here and it's shiny side down, matte side up. And I'll use my parchment paper and I'm just kind of pressing it down into the stickiness there. Okay, so that looks basically how we want it set up here. I feel like it's holding on and it's looking good there. If it weren't, if it's not sticking very well, if you're worried about how it's going to run under the rollers in the machine, you could of course use masking tape to kind of tape it down. This one's pretty thick. Personally, at home, I purchase washi tape. I love, the fun colors. It's not as sticky as masking tape. I know people use painter's tape as well. So a lot of great options for helping extend the life out of your mats. because they can, you know, pick up fuzzies and pick up junk the more you're using it. Again, if you're wanting to clean your mat, you can, you know, wash it in the sink with some dish soap. You know, don't scrub it too hard, but you're using that dish soap to like lift off any of the fuzzies or things that are affecting the glue on the mat. I've heard of other people using even spray glues to kind of re-adhere their mats. So I'm going to plug the maker into the computer now so they're able to communicate to each other. And let's get this cut ready to go. So here we can see the Maker 3 is connected. It's asking me to set the base material. So I'm going to browse all materials. The design space is really only calibrated for Cricut materials. So you're never going to find like the Caesar Easy Weed as a material listed available here. But if we click under all category drop down, we can find the iron-on category. And everyday iron-on is going to work the same as the as the Caesar Easy Weed here. So I'm going to click Done after I've selected everyday iron-on. It's reminding me, make sure mirror is turned on and that the material is shiny side or face down. The pressure I have, I'm just cutting this at default pressure. I feel like that's, we tested our blade the other day, so we know it's gonna be all good to go here. Let's slide the mat under the footings here and bump it right up against the roller. The feed button's already blinking, so that's telling me it's ready to suck the mat in and figure everything out here. I do kind of put a little bit of pressure against the roller so that it'll actually suck it right in. And so at this point, it's just making sure we have the right size of mat in here and calibrating the blade to be able to do its thing. Now the play button is blinking. That tells me we're ready to cut. So let's see how long this takes. All right. Now our cut is complete. It's kind of bumped it out almost all the way out. The feed button is blinking, meaning if we click the feed button, it'll push out our cut. But before I push it out, I want to take my weeding tool here, and I'm actually going to pick out the center of one of my letters just to make sure that it's sliced through all the way. If it hasn't sliced through all the way, you can actually press the play button again, and it'll cut the same thing over again. You'll want to do this before you eject the mat, because if you put the mat back in and recut it, it's not going to be lined up exactly. So I just did a test. You can see the vinyl came off really well, so that tells me it's cut all the way through and we're ready to eject the mat. Okay, so there's our design cut here and ready to be adhered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to organize my station here a little bit. We'll turn the maker off. Making a little bit of room here. I've also got a pressing mat, as we will want to make sure we protect our surface that we're pressing on from the heat. So we'll set that aside. And we're going to preheat our press. So I'm powering it on. Oh, and it's already set at 335. So the temperature is good on the press, but we need to turn our timer down because we're only going to be using medium pressure for about 10 to 15 seconds. So I'm going to turn the timer down to about 12 or 13 seconds. That sounds good to me. And so as it's preheating, we've got our orange kind of indicator here, and when it's all the way to the right temperature, it'll be green. So while that's warming up, we're going to weed our design here. Okay, so we're going to be weeding our design here. Some people like to weed it right on the mat because then that keeps it from, moving around or rolling up. But to me, I can see some nice chunks of vinyl here that hasn't been cut. So I'm actually going to remove it from the mat and save these scraps because, sometimes when you're doing a test cut, you just want a little scrap to be able to, cut a star or something out to make sure your blade is going to work for you. So I'm going to flip my mat over. And I'm going to hold down the vinyl to the table, and I'm removing the mat from the vinyl. Because if you were to flip it this way and peel it, you could actually kind of wreck your design or damage your vinyl. So to make the best use of it, flip it over and remove the mat from it there. So I'm going to flip it back. Not everybody is as frugal as me, and that's okay, but I definitely have a wonderful pile of scraps at home that I use. Sometimes you never know even when you're going to need a little bit of a scrap. I've had, some words where I've accidentally removed the dot of the I, and it's gone, and I need to cut out a new I dot. So, you can use a little scrap to be able to kind of fix things that you've maybe weeded out in error, or you can use it to test your blade. And that's just, I guess, my personal preference. So I have this wonderful tool here. This is a little cup that I can use to capture my weeded negative pieces here. So for example, if I weed out the center of my A, I can just take this and swipe my weeding tool in there. I got this on Amazon, super cheap, just a couple of dollars. But if you don't have anything like that, what I recommend is taking some masking tape. Oh, our easy press is up to temperature. So I'll take masking tape and I'll actually wrap it around my hand a couple of times. And then whenever I have a piece of material that I've weeded off, I can actually just stick it on there, and it kind of keeps everything all in one place so you're not finding little dots of vinyl all over the house or your space here. When it comes to the bigger parts, I just start in a corner and kind of pull away from a corner. And then usually, if you're kind of, I try to keep it flat, and then you can kind of pull it so that it's folding back onto itself. Instead of pulling up, you're pulling it back onto itself. So there's a few tricks here to getting the placement on the t-shirt right. Oftentimes, I'll measure my design and make sure it's going to fit the t-shirt here. Again, today I was just kind of eyeballing it and having a little bit of fun with it. But usually I have a measuring tape or rulers. I'm kind of envisioning it being 3D on a person's body. So you're not going to want to make your design come all the way up to like the armpits, because that's going to be curving around somebody's body and won't fit kind of centered where it is. And some of these lessons I've learned the hard way by doing them at home. So I hope you can learn from my mistakes and be able to get these all right the first time. So my poly cotton blend here t-shirt, we have a wonderful blank front. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to fold this in half. And so I'm lining up the armpits, I'm lining up the collar here, and I'm going to use my press to put a crease right down the center. So I'm using my mat, and you can tell which side to use because on the back it says this side down. So we'll set it down this way, and I'm just going to press down that crease. Now what I'm doing with this is I'm giving myself a little bit of a guide to know where the center of my shirt is. And I'm also using the press to remove any sort of moisture that's in the shirt. So that could affect how that adheres. With the orange shirts, red shirts, you'll notice the heat press does leave maybe a bit of a color change, a color difference, but when it cools back down, that will go away. Because I remember my first red shirt, I was like, I wrecked it, but no, it's all good. Now when I open it up all the way, I don't know if you can see it, but I see it. There's a very faint crease down the center of the shirt. So that's telling me where the middle of the shirt is. Now with my design here, I'm going to take it shiny side to shiny side, and I'm just kind of lining it up so I know where the center of my design is. And I'm going to put a little crease at the top here and a little crease at the bottom. And so now I'm going to be able to line up the shiny side, the crease here, to my crease down the middle of my shirt. And you're going to want to set your design about 3 finger spaces from the collar down. So if I were on this kind of a shirt, it's a V-neck, whereas this is more of a crew neck, but you would use 3 fingers and set the top of your design just below that. So 3 fingers down on this shirt here. Because the vinyl here is a little bit sticky, you know, the sticky side of the carrier sheet, it's going to want to kind of hold in place there. And I kind of have it lined up where I think it looks good here. So about 3 fingers down from the collar. Maybe it's not that straight. There we go. I also like to hold up the bottom so you can kind of get an idea of, you know, the bottom of the shirt here. I'll step back, take a good look at it, make sure I'm happy with how that looks. That looks good to me. Oh, you know what? I forgot a step. Okay, let me peel this back off. We want to lint roll the surface before we press the shirt on it, because if there's any lint or bumps in the way, that's going to show through the vinyl and you'll see, or it might cause it to not adhere appropriately. So I'm going to just run my lint roller over it. These again, you can get at Dollarama, super cheap. Or if you don't have a lint roller, feel free to use masking tape, wrap it around your hand, sticky side out, and then you could just kind of tap it across the surface of your shirt. That was something my late father used to always tell me, is the Nietzsche's never stuck. We always find a way to make things work and figure it out. Okay, so again, we're looking about 3 finger widths, lining this up. Take a look when you step back. Now, you're going to have to remember to center your design on the mat underneath the shirt. So you're not actually seeing the mat, but you want to make sure it looks good. So I have everything where I need it here. I'm going to pull out some parchment paper, and I'm going to use a parchment paper sheet to protect on top of this plastic carrier. The parchment paper diffuses the heat from the press, so it's more equal heat all around. Although these presses are really good for making sure that equal heat is across the plate. You can even use a home iron to press on your HTV. It's a lot of like pressure and like circles scrubbing with a home iron, but again, you can kind of make things work for what you have available. I'm not good at removing parchment paper or like tin foil. I always end up with like some ripped up weird piece, but here we go. So now I have this over my design on top of the plastic to be able to protect it. My press is ready to go 335 degrees Fahrenheit for 13 seconds. So I'm going to lift my press and set it right on my design here. And I'm going to press the Cricut button. And that starts our timer. And I'm just leaning into it a bit. We're doing a medium pressure here for this design. The timer is up, so I'm going to remove the press. And depending on the HTV, you might need to wait for it to cool down to be able to peel off the clear plastic part. But with the Easy Weed here, we're actually able to peel this hot. I just take a good look at it before I peel off the carrier. I want to make sure I can see some of the lines of the fabric through the vinyl. It looks a little bit, you know, bubbly. And then when we go to peel it off, you can actually see it's just lifting smoothly and really nice. Okay. So here we have our completed design. This t-shirt, you'll need to wait about 24 hours before you wash it. Wash them inside out, cold water. You can tumble dry low, or you could lay it flat or hang to dry. If you don't use the dryer, it will last a little bit longer, but I have shirts that I've made and washed like 20 times and they're still going strong. So just all depends on how well you adhere it to the shirt. And now we've completed a wonderful t-shirt project with HTV. Thank you.